What's up, guys? Should be live. Welcome back. Little Wednesday stream. No, Tuesday. I was gonna say Wednesday. I was gonna say Tuesday. For some reason, I thought it was Wednesday. Here's IOST on my chart. It's not what we're gonna start with. We're gonna start with Bitcoin like usual. IOST is going to be something we're gonna look at, but just a quick agenda for today. Bitcoin touching that 3430, that level that has been a pretty big. Still kind of struggling to find the best word. I guess it would be maybe an invalidation point for alts. It would kind of be a warning point for alts. It's been the first level of support that I would find interesting. And it looks like so far Bitcoin respecting that level on a sharp little drop. Now we're rising back up to where I'm expecting resistance, 3630. So we'll look at Bitcoin, what that means for me. Spoiler alert, that's just continuing to be a nice guide for how alts are going to move. And as long as 3430 held, which it did, right, these alt plays, I'm still kind of looking up and thinking they continue to perform well. Right, so best movers today, one that I still don't have too much confidence in, but it's a different setup. It's a momentum play. It's something that I wanted to cover last week, and that's IOST, that consolidation at resistance, right? Just anticipating that breakout. Now we've had both the conditions meet. So if you wanted to wait for the slower entry, that's been hit. If you wanted to wait for the kind of the riskier entry, 173, both those 5-10% profit. We'll talk about that play, what I'm still looking at there. I don't see any other plays that really resemble that, but I think it's a nice look, and I know that kind of matches some people's trading styles a little bit better than something that I play. Want to look at ELF, which I think is still primed and looks great. The other one that I'm kind of expecting the big move from soon, I thought we were going to get it, was DNT. We had a sharp spike on smaller time frames, and now it's still kind of sitting right in the 5% profit zone, but aiming for much higher. Right, past that, there are two majors that I want to update. Majors took up most of the activity, I would say, in December, and then the end of December and this month in January, I've spent a lot more time on Binance alts. Reason being is volume and activity has moved to those Binance alts, right? So when those can move, those are obviously more attractive. Majors I will still play, though. I love trading kind of major altcoins. Litecoin is a setup that made a lot of sense in terms of support resistance, support flip. It also lined up with Bitcoin kind of stopping its decline. I want to look at that play as it progresses, forming a nice little rounded bottom there. Hasn't been able to do much though, so still sitting pretty close to entry. And then this ETH play, I got some funny comments. I shared this one on Twitter as well. Some comments about whether or not this trend line is actually valid. But I want to go over what I'm looking at with this setup. This is a trade that 2 times in December it worked out really nice, 20% gain and a 30% play, right? The last play I tried to have with it, 2% loss, right? So I think it's due for another run up. Even if not, it's something that I'm going to continue to track in terms of having it close below this trend line as an invalidation level, and why I'm once again aiming for top of that swing high. Right, so that's kind of the new play. And then the last thing I want to look at to round out the stream, I have a lot of text here that's kind of in the way, is that new idea from yesterday, right? CMT volume really kicking in with this when we had the daily close above 790 or 800 sats, confirming the breakout for me. So far, price moves below the retest, and we'll see what happens at 7 p.m. But if we do get a daily close above that, that'd be a really nice sign. I think that the retest gives a better chance of confirming, and that I'd be targeting around 1,000 sats. Right, so that's kind of the new play is CMT and ETH. Everything else will be an update. You guys know how this goes. Quick shout out to everyone that's in here. Looks like we have a little bit of a lighter crowd than the early stream yesterday. What's going on? One Gear, Rosier, Caspers, what's up? Kilgore, Santiago, Jeffrey, Bueller. Hopefully everyone's doing well. I also found out there's still a couple people that watch without a YouTube account, which is fine. You don't have to make a YouTube account. But in order to ask questions, it's nothing with the Discord. You just have to make a YouTube account. So if you're watching and you're wondering, how the hell do people get their questions answered or ask questions, you have to make a YouTube account so you can be in the chat. What's up, Valerio? All right, let's jump into it, guys. So Bitcoin starting off this morning, and this caused a lot of discussion kind of across Twitter. I didn't find it as significant as I feel like it was being shared to be, but we had this really sharp candle, and I imagine if people are trading on 20 or 50x leverage, right, maybe it comes into play. But that's kind of been the level that I've been watching anyways, really all week, right? 3430 is that swing low, the first time we dropped out of the range back end of November. right? So in the Bitcoin trend analysis, really my one chart a day, which I really think has kind of captured Bitcoin, that's the first support that interested me. Everything in between the high time frame level of 3630 and 3430 is going to be chop. It's going to be levels that I'm not giving too much validity to, levels that I don't think are as strong, right? So as we move down, we pierce through that level on smaller time frames. I'll show you what it looks like, right? Ridiculous kind of selling going into that. Obviously, it pops right back up. Right, so it looks like that support is respected for now. Buyers stepped in right at 3,400 with size. You can call it a stop run, whatever it is, manufacturing liquidity, or there was just interest down there, or someone was getting out a large sell order. To me, it looks like running stops are trying to manufacture liquidity, right? But regardless, the biggest thing that I've been watching, and the biggest tell, or the biggest I guess tell is probably the best word, that I'm watching for Bitcoin. What I'm using it as is I still really haven't had a trade on Bitcoin now in the last couple of weeks. Alts have just been easier. Is that 3430 wasn't broken, right? So we did move down, but it was respected. No close below. We bounced immediately. Volume spike, right? So as long as that level holds, the window, quote unquote, kind of stays open for alts. And that's really all I need kind of Bitcoin to act as. Once again, the same thing as going into last weekend. If we get above, 3630, if we get above 3700, sure, swinging long on Bitcoin interests me. But until then, right, I would honestly think kind of the probability, if I'm playing probabilities, I think it's probably a higher chance Bitcoin, moves lower. I'm not shorting here though, right? Really, Bitcoin is just still a guide for me. For the past now 15 or 14 days, this chop does not interest me, especially it could interest me, right? But with the way that alts are moving, both majors and Binance coins, that's just way more attractive to me in terms of how I want to be spending my time, how I want to be looking at those opportunities. I just think that's a way easier table right now. Right, so for Bitcoin, that support still remains valid. That's still kind of the first level I'm interested in. I'm not sure we're going to get a tap of it again now that we already got it. Right, that's kind of the check mark that I think there's now a possibility we can move up. But still, in order for me to want to get long, I want to see us above 3,700. Right, just like we had going into last weekend, and that obviously failed. The other chart I want to show is something I showed on Monday. I think it was yesterday, and we were looking at the futures, right? Going into this week and how last week's gap was filled, right? So we had last week's gaps right here, right? Where price closed Friday, where it opened on Sunday night or Monday morning, right? Exact same thing we had here. Here was the gap, and I wanted to outline this and look at it, going into this week. Once again, that gap gets filled, right? So if gaps do interest you, if that is kind of a topic that interests you, if it's market behavior that interests you, I still need to find that video. I was going to post that in resources, but just kind of keeping tabs on that. If another gap does develop this weekend, right, it's kind of an interesting study on whether or not those gaps will fill. Typically, price will trade back through them, right? So now that gap has been filled, maybe we do move lower now. Whatever happens, right? Right now, alts are just a way more attractive scene for me. Hit rate's high. I think the opportunities are there. Risk reward, it makes sense. And this chop just isn't too exciting. Until then, it's going to be a nice guide. I want to see 3430 hold. No real worries about alts as long as it does. Right? That's how I'm viewing Bitcoin, guys. 2 check marks above here. If we can get back above 37, then I start taking out longs. In terms of the alt space, I guess I'll hit the updates first, or the more timely updates first. A coin that I haven't had to update too much, right, because it was really just consolidating at resistance for a while, is IOST. And this is the one idea where I would say that the vast majority, if we've maybe covered 7 alts or 8 alts, I think I've done this month in January, looking at different setups on Binance coins, right, the vast majority have looked a lot more like this. I'm going to pull up DNT as kind of a nice example. Almost all of them are somehow trading at kind of a cycle low or at daily or weekly support, right? A lot of them look like accumulation schematics. A lot of them look like accumulation, kind of using volume and using these historical support levels and then aiming for a next swing high. There's one trade idea that I covered last week which kind of bucks that trend, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's any less valid. It does mean I have maybe a little bit less conviction in it, right? But I know that this style suits some people better. Some people like to trade breakouts. Some people like to trade kind of horizontal supports. Some people like to trade moving out, whatever it is, right? I still do trade this style. I like this style, right? So what I was looking at with IOST is we have this consolidation as we move up at a daily resistance zone, right? So this level has been support, right? 3 or 4 times. As that level fails, right, that's when we kind of get the impulse move lower. As we come back up to retest this zone, right, price isn't being rejected like we see a ton of times when a resistance is strong or when price is going to retest this previous supportive resistance and then move lower, right? What was happening was, I'm glad we went over the setup because a lot of people were kind of asking what I meant by supply being eaten into, right? What was happening was as price is moving up against this resistance, right, selling pressure would knock it back down. Then immediately after it would retest, selling pressure, knock it back down. Each time kind of forming these higher lows, right? And each time not getting a nasty wick and then price just immediately rejecting. It was demand continuing to kind of push price and then literally just consolidating right at resistance, right? So that's how I look at a chart like this. And even though something is at resistance and you know, do make sense, right? That's not my default state of mind when I look at a chart. I don't want to get that too backwards in anyone's mind, but I do think this is a nice example of kind of a different idea than we would normally consider, right? Looking at price consolidating at that resistance, expecting the breakout. 2 different ways to play it when I went over it. Yeah, it does, Daniel. And one gear, I didn't know that fundamentally. It's good to know. 2 ways to play it that I was looking at, right, guys? When we were first hitting this 177, either buying that pullback at 170 or 173, I thought was interesting, right? If we're looking at 2 different ways to play it. Second way to play it is once we actually did get the confirmed closes above 180 sats, which we got, right? Retest. And now it looks like we're ready to move higher, right? So already forming a new kind of local high. For those that liked this play, I know a lot of people like momentum trading, breakout trading, whatever you want to call it. A little bit different than what I usually share. But it's a nice concept that we can illustrate, nice concept that I can go over live, and also a profitable trade. Right? So looking at where I want to be targeting with this, on smaller time frames now that looks really sloppy. But where I'm looking is these swing highs I was basing on the daily. That's why the candle looks weird. This next swing high I think is significant at 211 sats, right? That is a rather small or rather quick trade, especially if you got in from kind of the higher area. Only a 15 or 16% play. That's why I didn't like this play as much. But the momentum is nice. So that's kind of the first level I would definitely consider taking profits, basing it off of what's been working. I think I've tried to illustrate that, and I think everyone's seen that in the past month or two, why I like to use those swing highs as targets. Right, second level, if things really do get rolling, as Callahan points out, this does look very similar to rep, right before it started moving. This price action doesn't necessarily make me feel good, right? I'm not going to try to draw a falling wedge on this. I'm sure someone will on Twitter. I don't think it looks like a falling wedge, but whenever price is kind of just grinding slowly in a certain direction, it's not something that can be sustained, right? A chart just can't go up in a straight line forever up and to the right. There will be pullbacks, right? But maybe it does pop off like rep, right? I'm confident about the entry. I was bullish at resistance, expecting the breakout. These are the levels I'd be taking profit. Past that, IOST to me isn't too exciting. Just because I do kind of expect a pullback whenever that happens. If you are in the trade, a clear invalidation point for me would be if we do start to get below 167 or 170 sats again. Right? So based on the targets from the setup, right, anything like that I think makes a lot of sense. Even targeting the higher level I think makes a lot of sense, although less likely. And then for obviously the riskier entry, right, still be like a 25% play, but the invalidation is going to be below this zone that used to be support. Now that we've broken through it as resistance, right, I can kind of color code this to make this look a little bit easier. Green support, expecting resistance, and now once again back through the zone. You guessed it. All right, looking for that acting as support. So IOST, I like it. Really nice example. Different than what we're going to hit week in, week out. But hopefully that one makes sense to you guys. I know that's something that you can 100% apply other places. And if you dig it on board, a nice little play right there. Right. Second play I want to look at is something that I'm a lot more excited about just because it matches what I like to use, a concept and that I have way more conviction in, kind of just suits my style, I think, a little bit better, is DNT. And I've been waiting for this one to move for a while. It's finally starting to get volume. You know, after this initial spike, it looks like we'll have 2 days in a row breaking higher than kind of the previous 20-day moving average of volume. There was like a little spike we just had earlier today in terms of price wanting to spike up. I'm not paying too much attention, as I don't pay too much attention to smaller time frame with alts. But this price action is fine. Support is still holding, right? Setup was long at around 300, 305 sats, still targeting 460. And with the way things are moving, I'm still seeing, you know, 1 or 2 coins a day on Binance be the outlier and move the 20 or 30%, right? Whether or not that's your coin every single day, you know, it's never going to be your coin every single day, right? We have Loopring, which just ripped for 50%. So there's still coins popping every single day. I do want to be patient. I want to be taking profits at swing highs. I don't want to get in the way of these things. That's still what I'm looking at there. I'm excited for this one to hopefully start moving soon. We will see. Where is the other one? And then I'm going to hit the 2 majors. So let's look at those, right? Really only covered 2 majors going into this month of January, even though it was the bulk of everything last year or last month, right? Litecoin, very simple, support resistance flip, still turning up and forming somewhat of a rounded bottom. Would have liked to see it maybe play out a little bit longer and kind of touch this support a lot more. But this one continues to look fine. It's only up 3 or 4%. But for Litecoin, I still think this looks good. If we look at why I got a little bit more excited with majors today, someone else noticed this in the group as well, is Bitcoin Cash got a nice pop. Not sure where it came from, why it happened, right? But that got a little 5% pop in a really small amount of time, 7% pop. We look over at EOS. EOS earlier today also had 5-6% move, kind of all in a 1 hour time span. So as I look at ETH and Litecoin, those are kind of the 2 ideas I was tracking from a major standpoint for January. And these have not been as exciting to me, guys. Once Binance coins start moving, that's why I focus more time on those. They're just bigger wins. I think I have more of an edge there. I feel like I can really kind of take advantage of a few patterns that pop up. But I still am going to trade these majors if they give action. But no update there. Still doing fine as long as the support holds. The new idea based on this, though, as Litecoin moves, Bitcoin Cash moves, EOS looks great. Right, what I'm looking for here is, you might have recalled earlier in the month. Earlier in the month, I was looking at Ethereum like this, and I still am using this view. I think is helpful to still look at Ethereum. So previous 2 trades, liked the development down here, right? Aim for 0.033. Get above this, aim for 0.041 swing high, right? Most recent trade on this one, I wanted to play kind of the exact same play, right? So as we come back down to retest this, right? Previous resistance, support. I wanted to see price use this and move up and attack these swing highs again. Unfortunately, with the Constantinople upgrade, which got delayed, price fell through, right? So my setup looked, to give the stop and the target, right? I was willing to risk something like that, right? And after that upgrade failed and price started trading back below here, right? I didn't even want to let it get to kind of a full 5% loss. I thought there was definitely going to be more of a tailwind of selling, which we haven't gotten, right? So ETH is actually still holding up quite well. So as I look at other majors which have been able to pop, and obviously everything, you know, is kind of up in the air or at risk if Bitcoin is to fall. But if Bitcoin continues to do its thing, and all these other alts look fine, and majors are getting quite a few pops today, with ADA got a little move up, you know, EOS, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin still doing fine, it does make me think that maybe this trend for ETH and for other majors, as kind of mid caps continue to move, maybe these can continue to move up, right? So even in the previous charts, I had this trend line on there. Some people asked on whether or not, you know, you can use this as a trend line. If it starts at one touch point, goes through candles, and uses a second touch point, I guess, you know, I don't have that strict of a rule of whether or not it needs to do that. I don't want to confuse people. I know that does look like a rather unorthodox way to kind of have a trend line. I'm not viewing it too much as a support or resistance. It's really just kind of to visualize the trend of higher lows, right? I do think that trend walls, there's a couple of people on Twitter that have gone over trend walls, which I think are really interesting. it's not something I've studied extensively, but a trend line, the same way as a horizontal, right? If price moves through this horizontal, right? This is a previous resistance support. And right here, right, price move through this horizontal. It doesn't all of a sudden mean that this horizontal level, isn't valid anymore. Same thing with Bitcoin and this 3630 level, right? Just because we crossed below the 3630 and break it, right, doesn't all of a sudden invalidate it. Otherwise, right, the market wouldn't be focused on it as resistance touches, as support touches, right? So I know it looks a little bit different. I got a couple questions about that on Twitter. I thought it was funny. But the setup here is a lot more based on correlations. It's a lot more based on if the other majors are getting those pops and giving kind of those early signs and other alts are still able to continue higher, right? Playing these a little bit tighter or kind of playing this very close to where I'd be wrong for ETH, right? So if we did get a daily close below this trend line, right, for ETH, that'd be really quick, right? Just like with my previous trade, I am willing almost every single day if fundamentally and it aligns with kind of the trend, the current short-term trend of the market. It also aligns with what other coins are doing. The correlations match up, right? And technically, it has kind of a sound backing. I'm fine always risking kind of that 1 or 2%, whether that's a half R or a full R for you. That's up for you to decide. Even if you wanted to play it kind of a little bit looser and give myself enough room below previous swing low, I also still think that's kind of a valid setup as well. Right? Looking at very close to where I'd be wrong. If we start making newer lows or if this trend line doesn't hold, sure, I would take that. I could take that trade 5 or 6 or 7 times and kind of still be net positive for ETH for the past 30 days or whatever. Right? Even if I did want to play it looser, right, going below this most recent swing low, it's still playing it very close to where I'd be wrong. I still like that ETH play. Right, so hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. I know the trend line looked funky to a couple of people on Twitter. I didn't see anything about it in the group, but I always want to kind of explain any method or any tool or anything like that I'm using. So that's the new idea. CMT is the other new idea. One gear, I will answer that. CMT is the other new idea. You guys know this one. Our close above, did I already talk about this or this was just in the intro? Our close above 700 sats was kind of what I wanted to see, right? Retest concept everyone I'm sure is familiar with now. The biggest thing for me is today at 7 p.m., I would like to see this daily close above 790. I know I said 800 sats yesterday. I think a more accurate picture basing off this previous swing high is around 790 sats, but even 800, it'd be really nice if this daily closes up here. That would show me, right, if the daily closes back below kind of this retest level, that would have me worried. When the wick comes through, demand can prop price back up above that level. To me, it shows bulls can actually kind of control that level, can reclaim that level, and there's enough demand below to continue to push price up higher. Right, so that's one thing I'm watching with CMT. I do like the initial reaction. Full bids got filled. Still aiming for 1019 if that works out. But that's something I'm definitely keeping an eye on around 7 p.m. in 2 hours. So that's everything, guys. That's all the new ideas. ELF is really the only other one I want to look at. I think, a lot like DNT, ELF, two that I just have high conviction in. They just really match kind of exactly what I'm looking for. I expect this one, still have high conviction in this one. Still aiming for at least kind of 3,700 sats before I would take any profit. And I still like those setups. So I don't have updates for those. I know IOST and some other ones were the movers, but it continues to just be a really strong month for alts guys, regardless if your coin or if you haven't caught the 50 or 20% swing or whatever it is yet. One thing I want to continue to focus on day in, day out, week in, week out, is just being right on all the macro things, right? Understanding when it does make sense to be in alts, understanding when it does make sense to be taking risks in alts, and then understanding when that changes, right? To not be sitting there hoping and holding on. It's the only thing that's going to get you through cycles. It drastically increases your chances of doing well with alts, right? If they're all moving up at the time when you're taking more risk with them, obviously you're probably going to do better. The exact same way when they're all probably not going to move up, you can be de-risking before they've all dumped, right? So that's one thing I want to continue to focus on. Obviously, I want as many of these kind of example setups to go as well as possible, and I think we've already caught 2 or 3 that have been 30% and then vibed the nice winner. But I still like this one, guys. That's what I'm looking for. All right. I guess last one before One Gear, I answer your question, is RCN from yesterday. Talked a little bit about, I know greedy was a concept on Saturday and wanting to get more greedy as price dropped back below the range yesterday. Talked about wanting to take partial profits on RCN, 30% first high time frame level. Hopefully, if you were playing RCN and that made sense to you, it makes some sense now how I pick that, right? Previous swing high, get the wicks through. I would have loved to see it continue up to kind of the first high time frame resistance at 50% gain. So far, it's only been that 26, 30% move. I don't think there's any reason to panic now and worry and say, oh man, is RCN going to fall back to entry and not ever let me sell for a profit? I just always kind of, if Bitcoin is shaky and hasn't given full green lights, guys, I'm going to keep trying to identify partial take profits to lock in 30% gains are kind of automatic in this market. If I get a 30 or 50% winner, I have to take something out of that. Right? If it lines up with my plan, I have to. All right, so hopefully that one makes sense. That's all I have from my TA side of things. What do we got? One Gear, never heard the term trend wall before. Can you explain briefly, please? I don't use that term. It's from a trader on Twitter. His name's Will WMBD. I know Cred has worked with him before. I just follow him publicly on Twitter. I've never taken his course or anything like that. But I know that I've seen something similar that he uses trend lines like that and calls them trend walls, whether it's a trend line that has done a support resistance flip. I can't really speak to his kind of use of that trend wall. I just know people on Twitter have called those different things, whether you call them support resistance flip, whether you call it a trend line or people have mixed in support, demand, whatever kind of zone, line, or wall you want to call that. I was more just saying the validity of that line, to me at least, it doesn't matter too much if a trend line or something like that has candles going through it. Right? Generally, I'm using a trend line just to kind of really illustrate the trend. Sometimes, yes, they can be used for support, or sometimes they can be useful for demand. A lot of the times, they're going to be invalidation points for me. Right? One Gear, it's not my term, and it's not something I'm too familiar with. I was just kind of commenting that different traders on different Twitters on Twitter will have kind of different names for them. Right? But I've always used them like that. Right? That can be just as valid as a trend line that were to look like this. Right? This exact same trend line, I'll show you why. Right? I could pull that and just connect to kind of the two most recent touches, and it's the exact same line. Right, so if we're just taking here and here, right, it's the exact same line, right? I think that's even kind of how I saw it first with my eyes. Oddly enough, I just kind of saw this first. Right? Obviously, I can't make that as accurate as I can on smaller time frames, right? But that trend line is the exact same, whether extended out to the left or to the right. Yeah, One Gear, hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, guys, that's a new idea. I think that's interesting with ETH. Obviously, I would love to catch another nice 20 or 30% win with ETH. I'm really kind of am surprised that majors are getting a little pop today, even though Bitcoin kind of continues to linger. To me, though, it's not really so much about wanting to guess whether or not that continues, wanting to guess whether or not alts continue to have another week or another month, or whether it's alt season, right? I have my point on where, I probably have to pack up some of the alt plays. I have my point to know where, if this line is crossed and if Bitcoin does get down that low and continue to kind of show selling pressure, okay, alts will probably get hurt. As long as I have an alert there, I have an understanding, I know where that area is, right? I have to kind of just be fine taking the risk and wanting to play alts as they move up. I just think it's more of a risk kind of not to be taking that opportunity when they are doing that well. Right? Looks like ELF's getting a little bit of a jump. We'll see. I want ELF and DNT to kind of be the next two. Those are probably my two favorite now. Right? I would love to kind of see that movement. Both are consolidating, trading in tighter ranges after their initial kind of move up off that support. Right. initial move up off the support. Exact same thing with ELF. So I still really like those guys. I think it's totally possible by this weekend we can bang out another 20 or 30 or 50 even % winner. Obviously, that's Bitcoin dependent a little bit, but we've been on the right side of this trend. Moving slow, wanting to be in the alts as long as the window's there, not getting scared even if Bitcoin does give us a sharp move down today. And yeah, playing it slow and taking advantage of it like that. If anything changes, I'll obviously pass along to you guys. But these times, ever since second week of December, alts have been moving up. And there's been plenty of chances to definitely get one win. Even if you haven't had a win, I wouldn't be too worried about it. There's still opportunity. I'm not getting too worried. I know there's people kind of saying on Twitter, you can't buy alts at all right now. You're going to get crushed. Maybe they're right. Whenever that happens, though, that's kind of when I stop taking the risk. It's the same thing in the opposite market, right? As things are bearish, you want to be laying around the shorts until that's proven wrong. And then once that's proven wrong, okay, what's the next trend, or what's kind of the next opportunity or something like that. For right now, the window, in my opinion, is still open. So I'm liking with how things are progressing. I know alts it's a slow climb. It's not what everyone's used to from 2017. But I do like the positioning that I've kind of shared. I like some of these ideas a lot still, and that's what I'm looking at, guys. Hopefully that makes sense from a macro view. Hopefully you're having a good Tuesday. That's all I have for you. And yeah, signing off, guys. I will see you all tomorrow, same time. Stay well, take it easy, move slow. Have a good week.